scratch another item off the Ryan Day coaching bucket list. There are 3 Big Ten teams that Ryan Day has never faced as a head coach. He will get to remove one of those teams on Saturday at Illinois. 3 teams. What a coincidence. It's 3 things Thursday on the beat. He's Jeremy Birmingham. I am Austin Ward. Buckeyes back. By the way, it's the last true Big Ten team.
Right, because the others are UCLA.
The others are UCLA and USC.
Right.
And that seems silly. So he will complete the tour of the real Big Ten.
I was rattling through my brain trying to figure out who the other teams were. And then once you said true Big Ten teams, I'm like, oh, that makes sense.
Yeah, so those 2 are left. And UCLA in November, you'll add another one. And I believe he'll complete the new World Tour next year against USC. But that doesn't matter. This is about traveling to Champaign, 11 a.m. Central Time on Saturday.
Yeah.
Can't wait, Berm.
I mean, I can, but it's a good game, man. This is like, a really good test for Ohio State. It's a nice barometer game in the middle of the season. You get to go back on the road next week. You kind of wish you could just take the trip straight from Illinois up to Wisconsin, but we have to pretend that these kids go to school.
They don't need to spend a week in Wisconsin.
No, it's a beautiful state.
I'm not saying it's not, but what? Like,
I just think that, hey.
We have this beautiful practice facility right here for Ohio State.
The more we go to this NFLization of college football, like eventually they're just going to be like, you know what, screw it. We're not going back to Columbus. We're going to stop at a high school field on the way up to Madison and practice for a couple days. But no, it's a big game. It's Illinois, as I said, on Letterman Row on Wednesday, this is a game. Illinois is desperate to win this game. And so I think Ryan Day, who has been so keen on using the term desperate and hungry in the last few days, the last few weeks, has to go into this game fully aware of how desperate Brett Bielema and his team are. And unfortunately for Brett, your desperation makes it easier for Ryan Day to make sure his team's alert.
Yeah, so that's actually a beautiful buildup. Everything you outlined about this challenge for Ohio State. Thing number 1 was I wanted you to rate the cause for concern or upset alert, or however you want to phrase it, panic meter. People will call it different things. Yeah. On a scale of 1 to 10, what is the level of urgency and attention to detail and intensity that is required for Illinois?
If we're talking upset alert, I guess I'd put the Buckeyes at a 3 or a 4. Illinois is a pretty good team. They're not ranked number 17 in the country for no reason. They're 5-1. They have one of the best quarterbacks in the country on their team. I think that's ultimately the difference between the trip to Washington, for example, and this trip. While DeMond Williams maybe has a better long-term upside than Luke Altmaier, he doesn't have the experience to understand how to handle some of the stuff Ohio State did. Now, we'll find out early if Luke Altmaier did, but I suspect that his experience will have him at least more capable of adjusting without changing his way of play. We saw at Washington, once Arvell Reese swallowed up DeMond Williams
the first time,
DeMond Williams stopped trying to run, which is the biggest part of his game. That was the threat. Altmaier's a good athlete. He's not as good as DeMond Williams, but he's a guy that is going to feel more comfortable throwing the ball. Illinois has been showing some competency pushing the ball down the field. So if Ohio State comes into this game and it's 3-0 Illinois at the end of the first quarter and you're playing a quarterback like this, it's a much bigger problem to me than it was in Washington. Number 1, the start time. Number 2, just the weirdness of Illinois. Number 3, the experience of Brett Bielema as a head coach, the experience of Luke Altmaier. So I'm at a 4. This was a game we all circled preseason. We all expected Illinois to be a top 10 team. We didn't expect the loss to Indiana to be so grotesque that it changed the national perception of Illinois so dramatically. But for Ryan Day, okay, so here's the spoiler alert. We're recording this before Wednesday night in the Woody Hayes Athletic Center. I am convinced we are going to hear a more dialed in, more intense version of Ryan Day than we even heard on Tuesday or heading into the Washington game, because I this one has to be, we all scheduled it. So that means they probably did too, as one hey, let's watch this. And now it's here, and Illinois has a lot to gain in a game Saturday. Ohio State has not a lot to lose, because if you go on the road and lose to the number 17 team in the country, and you can bounce back, you can still make the national championship game, you can do all that. Illinois doesn't win, they're out of playoff race, really. It's another
with that hideous disfigurement on their resume. They would have to be
right. So it changes. It's everything on the season for them, and this is a season Illinois had really put a lot of emphasis on, because they felt like they had the team to make a run. So we'll see. They've got a good defensive line. That can change the game. Ohio State's running game has been inconsistent. Illinois can do some things. So I'm excited for the matchup. I think it's going to be a really good game.
I think that's really interesting. I was trying to figure out where I would land on that scale, because as we were standing inside the lobby 2 weeks ago, getting ready to go out to Washington for that matchup, you started a Three Things Thursday and you said, this spread is 8.5, and it doesn't feel right. And in the way that we were talking about that matchup and the unique challenges, and it wasn't related necessarily to Washington's on-field talent outside of DeMond Williams and what we're going to find out about the Buckeyes defensively for that matchup, was like, if Ohio State manages the travel fine, they're going to beat this team by double digits every single time. How did this get down to 8.5? And it started working the other way the closer you got to kickoff. This one, right from Jump Street, came out at more than 2 touchdowns. I think it's 15.5 points right now. And I consider Illinois to be
a vastly better team,
a much more talented roster, 1 through 85, a different style quarterback, but some of the, they have multiple skill position players. Washington had a big 3. I think you can expand that. There are a couple wide receivers that can cause a real problem here, starting with Hank Beatty. I'll talk about him a little bit later on, but in a defense as well, like Illinois is number 1 in the Big Ten in turnover margin. I know what happened against Indiana, but I would have thought those spreads would be reversed, because I feel like the threat from Illinois, because you also still have to travel, you still have to fly. It's not all the way over to the West Coast, obviously. It's a much shorter flight, but you're going to deal with all the same challenges. It's not going to be probably quite as loud. I bet there's going to be just as many Scarlet and Gray fans at Memorial Stadium on Saturday. So maybe not the most imposing venue, but it's going to be...
I imagine a lot of Ohio State fans bought tickets the day that Illinois got drubbed at Indiana.
I think
a lot of Illinois fans probably sold them.
I think it was more like a bunch of Ohio State fans already had them, and then Illinois fans were like, please take these from us. Although they've bounced back nicely. So
hotels in Champaign are not cheap this weekend, my friends.
Or anywhere.
Yeah.
Or anywhere.
Anywhere in the general vicinity.
If you can even find them.
Yeah, that means the locals are coming.
Even Indianapolis got really expensive for being about halfway there. So I guess I'm saying that I feel like the threat from Illinois is more significant than I believed it was going to be from Washington. But I still don't think that certainly if you put them on a neutral field, Ohio State would win this game 95 times out of 100, in my opinion. When you factor in what could happen in Champaign, and if the elements, just the wind picks up out of no reason, or they get a little confidence, as you said, it's 3-0. Brett Bielema is good enough, and I think that there are enough talented players on that team to make it a little bit wonky. So I am higher than you.
They've won big games.
Yeah, I feel uncomfortable that I have Illinois as a greater upset threat. Don't believe that they will do it than you do, though.
Well, I think what you said is right. Washington is not as talented a team as Illinois, 1-85. Washington may have like 5 better players overall, but the rest of the roster is not nearly the same. Brett Bielema's been there for a while now. He's built his team. He's got what he wants. He's done a great job getting guys ready for the NFL. They're starting to recruit at a higher level. This is going to be their Super Bowl. And Ohio State...
How many Super Bowls do the Buckeyes have to play?
That's the problem. They have to play one every week, and they know it, which, again, makes it difficult for the teams they're playing to sneak up on them.
Yeah.
And Ryan Day's approach has allowed Ohio State to not pay attention to all of the national discussion around Illinois after that 53-point loss to Indiana. And I imagine tonight we'll hear him talk about throwing that film away again and all the other cliches that came out on Tuesday. So
I think he'll talk about the Illinois?
Doubt it. No. I mean, he'll probably get asked about it by TV folks, but there is nothing about this game that screams like cakewalk to me. And it's crazy to say that. I hope, Ryan Day says throw out that game. I hope that they didn't throw out the 2007 game when Illinois came into Columbus and beat number 1 ranked Ohio State. I think those are important things to show a team that 2007 team was similar in a lot of ways to this team, where it's like they were kind of starting over, yet they midway through the season were like, oh crap, we might be the best team in the country. And then all of a sudden, you think you've got it, and then you're going to
get got. Yeah, I think out of some of the shenanigans about the Illinois and speeches about rivalry trophies and all that, I actually think that there is some validity to James Laurinaitis and Brian Hartline being able to talk about the Illinois history in 2007 specifically. I mean, that's got to rank up amongst some of the most shocking and disappointing games that James Laurinaitis has ever seen or been a part of.
Yeah. I mean, Juice Williams put the Buckeyes in a blender for 4 quarters.
Juiced them. Thing number 2. as you look at this matchup, Birm, what is the most interesting head-to-head showdown on the field to you?
It's trying to figure out where the Ohio State running game is. I sound like a broken record because every week on Thursday, I keep going back to the running game. Illinois gave up 312.
Well, it's the one thing that you can't like demonstrably see improvement from week to week.
Illinois gave up 312 yards on the ground to Indiana. And again, we're throwing that tape out.
Okay? We don't have to.
But Indiana also sacked Illinois 7 times in that game. Duke had 4 sacks against Luke Altmaier. Like this game's going to come down to the offensive lines and which one of them has a game that like they're proud of. And Ohio State's offensive line's played great. Illinois has played bad in stretches, but their defensive line, which is probably one of their strengths, got absolutely torched against Indiana, which is not a team that is like a run first team. So I hope that Ohio State was watching that film to see what worked in the run game, not necessarily like which players did this or what, but like what worked for Indiana to run for 312 yards, because Illinois has not given up more than 123 on the ground in their other 5 games, and that was to USC, and that took 35 carries. So they've been stout. They have not been Minnesota, Wisconsin stout, but to me the matchup is the Ohio State offensive line versus the Illinois defensive line and vice versa, because we still, again, heading into Wednesday night as we record this, the tenor around Kenyatta Jackson's injury on Tuesday, as I went back to your house and was working on a story, I was rereading Ryan Day's quote, and I'm like, man, that wasn't as hopeful as I thought it was in the moment.
I think he presented it positively, and the words were actually more negative.
Yeah, it was
lipstick on a pig.
So now, like, I'm like, again, I don't know what we're going to see when we walk into that building. We're not sure what Kenyatta Jackson's going to be doing, but if you take him off the field, that means that there is a hole in the Ohio State defensive line that someone that has never had to fill a hole for the Buckeyes is going to have to fill. So who's it going to be, and how does that impact the game? Because Illinois likely gets their starting running back this week. He's missed a couple weeks. They have not been full strength on their offense, and they still beat USC and still went to Purdue and won. Now, everyone does that, but it's still hard to do, to win on the road in the Big Ten. Every coach will tell you that. Every coach.
They will. I feel better about Ohio State's ability to you cannot like for like Kenyatta Jackson and his impact. There's only one of those people with that physical profile on this team. But in terms of finding some other options to fill in and creativity, not even just like, well, Arvell Reese can do it and then you can move on. He could do Kenyatta Jackson things all day long. But some of the rise of Bo Atkinson, I think we maybe haven't talked enough about on the beat. Logan George a week ago, you mentioned him on Snap Judgments on Saturday, I believe, or at some point this week you did. Zion Grady,
all kind of run together.
Yeah, but I think it's worth reiterating that Bo Atkinson, he's not Kenyatta Jackson, but he's certainly more than serviceable. And then if you get another step forward for Zion Grady, and by the way, you can still fill some of that void with Arvell Reese or creativity. Riley Pettijohn, I don't know.
Arvell Reese can move down. Ryan Day made it a point to talk about Arvell Reese and Sonny Styles
I think he will do that.
And he can move down, and you can still play 3 linebackers because you trust Riley Pettijohn and Peyton Pierce enough to move them in and let Arvell just be a traditional edge rusher. So there's ways you can play around it, but you go into this season and you got a guy who's being talked about as a potential block O and all of the strides that Kenyatta made, and we haven't. I was critical of him in the first couple of games, and now here we are heading into Game 6, and there's like recurring injury things that are keeping him slowed down. So it's a lot to ask a guy who played at Idaho State last year. It's a lot to ask a guy who was playing in an Alabama high school football games in Troy, Alabama last year, to step into those shoes and be the leader and be the game wrecker that Kenyatta has the potential to be. Bo Atkinson is a guy who I think has to be really involved.
Yeah. So you mentioned Illinois going on the road and winning at Purdue and saying that everybody does that. I do remember that Ohio State once went there and struggled to do so, and it was a do-everything, versatile X factor that gave them a nightmare.
Yeah. That was the last non-Michigan or Oregon Ohio State or Big Ten game Ohio State lost.
Now, I'm not saying that Hank Beatty is Rondale Moore. That would be the highest of praise. And then I would have to say that I would be at like a 10 on the alert if that was the case. But he's done a little bit of everything. I believe he's got 32 catches right now. He has thrown for a touchdown. He's run for a touchdown. He has 2 receiving touchdowns, and he has a punt return touchdown. He has got athleticism. You should not I'm not talking to you, America. No one, I think, in this building is dismissing his talents, but I'm it's not as easy as you could just say, well, Davison Igbinosun's going to cover this person and it's going to follow him around wherever. Can't just do that with Jermaine Matthews, and you can't even do it with just Lorenzo Styles. I think it's going to take a collective effort from all of the corners, all the nickel safety looks from Matt Patricia, and like I could not pretend to tell you what is the desired way for Matt Patricia to defend him, but he's the one that's at the top of the list. If you remove that from the equation for Illinois, they're going to have big time problems. He's their best weapon, and I'm not certain about how Ohio State will try to eliminate him. I'm pretty confident that they will, but I'm much more curious about how they do it.
Well, because if we could put ourselves in a time machine and go back to 2018 and take Caleb Downs with us, like, does that change what happens in that game?
Would that be better than freshman
Tyreek
Shaun
Johnson
Wade?
and Shaun Wade? I think it probably is. So, I mean, I would imagine that what Caleb can do is move the defense around, and having a coach on the field who's seeing all these things.
Yeah.
But Illinois has to do it. And Brett Bielema is smart. Their offense is smart. Altmaier is going to get the ball out quick. This is not going to be a game, I think, where Illinois gives Ohio State a chance to get a bunch of sacks. So the defensive line is going to be about who's making those plays that JT Tuimoloau would make, who's going to drop into coverage and knock a ball down, who's, one of the little, again, it's all nitpicking when we're talking anything negative about the Ohio State defense right now. But one thing that you miss from last year are the hands up, the batted balls, things like that at the line of scrimmage. I was reminded of it, sadly, watching the Bengals on Sunday on the first play of the game when Tyleik Williams knocked the ball out of the sky.
He's the king of it.
On Jake Browning's first pass. And you see him out there doing this. I'm like, miss that, because there hasn't been anybody. Caden McDonald's a great run stuffer, but he's not a guy that's in and he's developing into a good pass rusher. But there's certain things that Ohio State's old defensive line was able to do that we haven't seen this group do. And I think that those are the things that you need to do against Illinois.
Yeah, I still think the preseason conversation that we had about, well, you can bring one person back from last year's roster and put him on him. Like, even at the midway point of the year, I still think Tyleik is the answer.
Well, because Tyleik and this version of Caden McDonald would be as dominant a 1-2 punch as defensive tackle as we've ever seen in Columbus.
Yeah, that would be borderline unfair. So you told me you wanted thing number 3.
Time machines.
To be, I'm not giving you a time machine.
Yeah.
We're moving towards the future.
Mm-hmm.
Where we're going, there are roads. It's to Champaign. But an area that you said, let's talk about a way that Ohio State can actually get better, which again is probably nitpicking, but that's sort of what you have to do with the number 1 team in the country.
Well, because Ryan Day on Tuesday was talking about how, like, all of a sudden his team is likely hearing that they're the number 1 team in the country. That it's funny because I think a lot of
you want to cut their ears off.
Yeah, I want to cut their ears off. I want to Van Gogh them. The reality is, I think a lot of the line movement in the Washington game was a byproduct of people not knowing what Ohio State was really about, and just expecting the noise and the travel and all of the extemporaneous stuff to be the problem for Ohio State, not Washington's talent necessarily.
Sure.
And I think those things are being completely ignored about this game. And then people are just looking at the talent saying, well, Ohio State's going to win. But you still have to go on the road. You still have to play at 11 a.m. There's still a lot of things that are weird. But Ohio State's focus and everything else has been so good. I can't get away from the fact that there needs to be a consistent third option at wide receiver, because the run game has been inconsistent. And Bo Jackson, even as good as he was against Grambling and Ohio, I mean, his yards per carry has fallen by 66% in the 2 games in the Big Ten. So he's down to just under 5 yards a carry, which is still pretty good. It still leads the team, but you start to see like the tightening of the talent gap and how it changes the way the offense looks. We are going to see teams try and double team Jeremiah Smith. We're also going to start to see teams try and figure out if you can double team both Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate. Can you shade?
Bet you can't.
Can you shade double coverage to both?
Yeah.
Last week is a reminder why you can't do that, because Max Clare had 6 targets for 80 yards and 5 catches. I don't know if it's Max Clare this week. Illinois has not been particularly prone to giving up plays to the tight end. I think USC had like 95 yards to their tight ends, but no one else has had more than like 1 catch against them at that position. I'm not going to sit here and pretend I've watched all of Illinois' defensive film, but whether it's Max Clare, whether it's Brandon Innes, whether it's James Peoples out of the backfield, whether it's Mylan Graham, if Bryson Rogers isn't able to go, somebody else has to become oh crap, we need to worry about that guy, because the more, and this isn't really like it's an Ohio State problem. Ryan Day and this team are so content doing whatever the defense allows them to do. And in these types of games where the game's gonna go fast, it's gonna be a shortened game. Like, I think you have to have a way to redirect the energy and redirect their focus or the opposition's focus so that you can do what you want. And I know Ohio State can throw 9-yard hitches to Jeremiah Smith all day and they can complete 14 or 15 of them fine, but that's still going to take 7 minutes to get down the field and score a touchdown. And like, I think you have to find somebody who's going to be able to stretch the field even when opponents are taking it away from Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate. So Julian's saying, like, in a complete reversal from a year ago, he's the best long ball thrower in college football, where Will Howard struggled in the first half of the year to be consistent and accurate down the field. Julian Saint's not struggled in that department. Now, his numbers, it's not like he's having a bunch of chances to do that. He didn't throw a single ball down the field against Washington more than 20 yards. And Washington's defensive coordinator, who is the former defensive coordinator at Illinois, like, that is what they are going to run. So how do you eliminate Illinois? How do you stop Illinois from doing everything they want on defense? And I think the way you do that is by having a consistent, explosive third option, not necessarily Brandon Ennis, who's just a gadget slot player. Like, somebody has to be able to stretch the field when down the middle of the field.
A seam demon.
A seam demon.
You said Mylan Graham?
I'm fine with it. Whoever it is, I just think someone has to force the middle third of the field to be covered.
Yeah. I mean, we saw that last week. Max Clare had 5 catches, and it's like, that thing seems to be trending in the right direction. I don't know if that is going to happen every single week. In fact, I would boldly predict that it doesn't, because that's just the way it goes for tight ends. There are going to be games where they maximize it. And the thing about Ohio State and the vast array of skill talent they have is that Illinois will see the way Minnesota tried to defend them. What worked, what didn't work, what happened, what was the repercussion of defending them this way? Well, you have to start with the knowledge that you cannot eliminate Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate from the Ohio State offense. It won't happen. Okay? Point blank, period, end of discussion. Okay, well, they did this, but then Max Clare got loose, and then there's 5 receptions. So they're going to react to that. All right, maybe this is what they're trying to do. Ohio State is trying to do offensively. This is what Brian Hartline wants. You got to eliminate Max Clare. Well, that's the beauty of what Ohio State has accumulated here in terms of talent. It is going to be constant games of whack-a-mole for Big Ten defensive coordinators from here on out, because, as you mentioned, whether that means another wrinkle to the role for James Peoples, whether that is, as Jeremiah Smith suggested when we left the stadium on Saturday night, Brandon Ennis is the next one up that will reap the benefits of what happened from J.J. Carnell and Max Clare a week ago. I mean, whether that's a healthy Bryson Rogers, whether that's C.J. Donaldson out of the backfield, Bo Jackson, or just an element of using some of the pop passes and end rounds like that. Like
Bo Jackson, who Ryan Day suggested 2 weeks ago could have been a wide receiver because he runs routes so well. So I just think we saw what happened to the Ohio State offense when they faced a defense that was rooted in the same principles as Matt Patricia's defense now. Yeah. Ryan Walters' defense at Washington is the Illinois defense. So they are going to run a lot of the same principles. And so it's unique in that way, because you've already kind of seen this if you're Ohio State, and everyone else in the country is watching Ohio State do it, but they don't have the offensive weapons to make the adjustments the Buckeyes do.
Right.
And the Buckeyes have those weapons, so now it's about who's the guy that's just going to be the guy. And once that guy establishes himself and is consistent and reliable week in, week out, this offense is going to completely change.
How are they going to do it? Boop, 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 boop. Okay, got it. Yeah.
You can just say that's all, folks.
I feel like that way. Yeah. I mean, you covered it, and I don't know that it's a strange feeling right now with this team, because like everything that we've talked about, the next week it has been addressed. The only thing that has lingered is that the run game has not been quote unquote explosive. Like, that is what Ryan Day has stressed. We've heard him say that every single week. Now, he has been outspoken, I guess, maybe more so than we would believe, or if we are nitpicking, like, well, that's not Ohio State standard. Like, this is the program that had Travion and Quinshon Judkins and J.K. Dobbins and Ezekiel Elliott and Eddie George and a powerful running game that they can't just be willing to accept that. And I think that they are. This team is not designed to be run first. And sometimes when we get hyper focused on, well, the run game needs to average another yard per carry, or they need to have this many splash plays in the run game, it's missing the fact that this team is equipped to do that in the passing game that no one else in the country is, or most Ohio State programs throughout the history of this, rich university have been capable of doing. So, I don't feel like that is an absolute necessity, and that sounds crazy.
It doesn't to me, because I don't think most people believe it's a real problem on a down-to-down basis. I think it's situational, situational running. That's where the Buckeyes have really struggled, and that's not a this year phenomenon. That is a repeated issue under Ryan Day, with the notable exception of J.K. Dobbins in 2019 and last year because you had Quinshon and Travion. So unless you have had an elite running back, and Bo Jackson might be that guy. We've certainly seen glimpses to suggest he could be. Unless you are have that dude and he's getting all those carries, like maybe it's a matter simply of not trading out C.J. Donaldson for Bo Jackson in those moments. We don't know. Yeah. Like there's a lot of things that are on the table, but it's not like Ohio State's running the ball poorly. They just aren't situationally running the ball when everyone knows they're running the ball. And that's when you get to talent equated games, and this is not one, but again, it is a number 17 team in the country. It is on the road. It is all the other things. Like weird little things happen if you can't pick up a 3rd and 1 at midfield. So that is like, you can't ignore it, and obviously special teams, which we're not going to talk about this week.
Yeah, that's why I didn't bring it up as an area where the Buckeyes can improve. But I do think that last week they showed signs of improvement there. Like, good for them. Now, that sounds like not the optimum time to be talking about it in a game that they missed a 50-yard field goal, and that is going to carry more weight than generating a gadget play with Brandon Ennis and Lorenzo Styles on a punt return to finally show some creativity and a spark. But that's not nothing either. Yeah. And that's going to have to be in the back of the minds of opponents moving forward. And the fact that Ryan Day or Rob Keyes or Nate Ebner or whoever decided that was a good time to do that, when for weeks we've just been like, hey, can somebody catch a punt? And then they're like, no, Brandon Ennis, you're going to catch this punt, and then you're going to run, and then you're going to throw it across the field. Like, okay. Yeah. Must still have a lot of confidence there.
But there's a flip side of that, too, in the Ohio State punting game, which is to say if you're comfortable playing slower pace games, lower scoring games, less plays, and you're playing against teams that are trying to put you in disadvantageous field position situations, sometimes you might need a punter who can hit it more than 43 yards. And so, like, is Nick McClarty finally a year and a half later ready to make that set? I'm not saying Joe McGuire's been bad by any stretch. He had his longest punt of the season against Minnesota. Yeah. But, like, there are weapons. The special teams game can be weapons. Have you heard that before?
I am aware of it.
Like, Nick McClarty was recruited by Ohio State because he was hitting the ball 80-plus yards with his leg. So, like, the transition to the American football and how, getting the ball off his foot quickly, all that's taken time. But if, there are little ways, and we talked on Tuesday's Snap Judgments, like, is Jackson Corville a guy that maybe the next time there's a 50-yarder, you just see what happens? Like, how does the team that is dominating every statistic, how does the team that's better than everybody in the country in literally every single metric right now, offensively and defensively, efficiency-wise, how do you get better? And it's like, well, we've got 2 scholarship punters. We've got 2 scholarship kickers. Both our punter and our kicker have proven to be okay, but is okay good enough at Ohio State when you have a guy potentially like Nick McClarty who could be out there hitting 65, 70-yarders and changing field position and then ruining teams that they're playing, because the only way you're going to score against Ohio State with the way this defense is if you have a short field, is if you have an opportunity to quickly change field position. And so if Ohio State can find ways to win, like the last couple of years, they've given up a ton of hidden yards. So like if you can if you can find a way to win some of those hidden yards, like that's where this team even takes another step, in my opinion.
Well, I'm told that the issues are always there. We will see if Ryan Day and the Buckeyes can find a few of them and correct them or enhance them by the time they get to Champaign, Illinois on Saturday, 11 a.m. Central Time, noon Eastern. That is a big noon kickoff on Fox. We are another day closer. Thanks for spending part of your Thursday with us here on The Beat. It was a 3 Things Thursday on the Austin Birm Show. And he's Birm. I'm Austin. We'll talk to y'all later.